Hi students, welcome back to another video of Indian economic development. Today we are going to discuss what was the condition of demography under colonial rule, what was the condition of occupational structure under colonial rule, and what was the condition of infrastructure under British rule. Okay, so without wasting time we can directly go to the topic, that is demographic condition under colonial rule. So what is the meaning of demography? Demography is related with the population. So under demography we will discuss about what was the condition of population growth rate, what was the condition of birth rate, death rate, infant mortality rate, literacy rate, etc. Okay, so for this purpose we need the data. From where we will get data? From census. Because in India each and every 10 years census is conducting, and in that census the government officials are collecting data related with the demography. Okay, so the question is, in which year the first census was conducted? No doubt it was firstly conducted in the year 1881. In the year 1881 was the first census in India conducted. Okay, so at the same time the year 1921. The year 1921 is treated as year of great divide. In Indian history, year of great divide. Okay, so why this 1921 is treated as year of great divide? The reason is that in 1921, from 1921 onwards, Indian economy entered to the second stage of demographic transition. So what is the meaning of demographic transition? So demographic transition means the transformation of an economy from high birth rate and high death rate to low birth rate and low death rate. So every economy want to achieve low birth rate and low death rate. For that purpose they will introduce various policies and programs. So as a result their demography or population growth will change from one to another. So that process is known as demographic transition. So normally in economic theory, demographic transition has 4 stages. In the first stage, both birth rate as well as death rate will be very high. Birth rate will be very high, at the same time death rate also will be very high. Okay, if both are very high, then we cannot predict what happened to the population growth. Sometime population growth may increase, sometime population growth may decrease, because death rate is high and birth rate also high. When the economy entered into the second stage, what happened? Death rate started to fall. But what happened to birth rate? It will be rising. So there we can see a high birth rate and a low death rate. And in the third stage, when the economy enters into third stage, automatically slowly birth rate also starts to decline. So there we can see low birth rate and low death rate. And in fourth stage, that low birth rate will become at low level, or birth rate will become at low level. So in fourth stage, there we can see low birth rate and low death rate. So in 1921 or from 1921 onwards, Indian economy entered into the second stage of demographic transition. So before 1921, our population growth rate was not consistent. Okay, so this data shows that one. That is, in 1901, our population, that is, population decreased by 0.04 crore. In which year? 1901. But in 1911, in the next census, what happened to our population? Our population increased by 1.38 crore. But what happened in 1921 in the next census? Again population growth decreased by 0.07 crore. So from 1921 onward, population didn't started decline. So population started rising only. There we can see a constant rise in our population growth from 1921 onward. So that's why this 1921 is treated as year of Great Divide. Okay, now we need to analyze the case of demography under colonial rule. So the demography shows, or the condition of demography under colonial rule shows the backwardness as well as stagnation of Indian economy. So here data will show that. So firstly we can discuss birth rate and death rate. So what is the meaning of birth rate? Birth rate is the number of birth per 1,000 people. Death rate means number of death per 1,000 people. So under colonial rule, our birth rate it was 48 and death rate it was 40. Birth rate 48 and death rate it was 40. Both were very high. So if both are very high, or high birth rate and high death rate shows lack of health infrastructural facilities in that particular country. So there we can see a low level of health infrastructure in our economy. That is the reason of high birth rate and a high death rate. If we analyze the present year data, current year data, our birth rate became 18.2 and death rate became 7.3. Both are decreased. That shows our improvement in health infrastructure. Next one, that is infant mortality rate. What is the meaning of infant mortality rate? Infant mortality rate is the number of children dying before completing 1 year per 1,000 live birth. So under colonial rule, infant mortality rate it was 218. That means out of 1,000 births, out of 1,000 live birth, 218 babies or children were died before completing 1 year. Now what happened to the present situation? It became 29.9. Okay, that also shows our improvement in health infrastructure. And the next one, life expectancy. What is the meaning of life expectancy? It is the average number of years that a person can live. Okay, if the health condition of the people are good, if the health infrastructure is good, then what happened to the life expectancy? It will be very high. So if we analyze the condition of life expectancy under colonial rule, it was only 32 years. But now as per the present data, it became 70.4 years. So that shows the pathetic condition of health sector under colonial rule. Last one, that is literacy rate. So who is known as literate? A person who can read and write in any one of the language. That person is treated as literate. So if we analyze the literacy rate shows educational level. Okay, if we analyze the literacy rate under colonial rule, it was only 16%. 16% of the population were know how to write and read. Okay, out of the 16%, female literacy rate it was only 7%. And if we analyze the case of present situation as per 2011 census, that was the last census. Next census will conduct in 2021. Okay, so as per 2011 census, our literacy rate became 74.04%, whereas female literacy it is 65.5%. So as a result of continuous effort for the development of education, our literacy became very high. Okay, comparing with the other underdeveloped economy. Then also we have to achieve more milestone. So government of India is trying to achieve it. Okay, we can expect. So if we analyze the case of demography in single word, we can characterize or we can summarize that this demographic profile under colonial rule shows backwardness as well as stagnation of Indian economy. So coming to the next topic, that is occupational structure on the eve of independence. So what was the condition of workforce at the time of independence? So what is the meaning of occupational structure? Occupational structure means distribution of workforce among different sectors. We know that Indian economy, or normally an economy, will be divided into three sectors. First one, primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. Then how much percentage of workforce are engaged in primary sector, in secondary sector and tertiary sector? That shows occupational structure. So this occupational structure of India during the time of independence we can explain with the help of this table. So this table shows the data related to occupational structure during the year 1951. Okay, in 1951, 72.7% of workforce were engaged in primary sector. You know primary sector. Primary sector means agriculture and allied activities. So more than half of the percentage of workforce were engaged in which sector? Primary sector. Next one, 10.1% of workforce were engaged in secondary sector and 17.2% of workforce were engaged in tertiary sector or service sector. Okay, so from this table we can derive mainly three conclusions or three observations. First one, that is agriculture is the principal source of occupation or employment. Agriculture was the principal source of employment. There we can see more than 72% of the people belongs to agricultural sector. So it was the principal or main source of employment during the time of independence. So normally if we analyze the case of a developed nation, so in the case of developed nation, the share of agricultural sector to GDP will be very less. So in present situation also in India, the working population, more than 51% of working populations are engaged in agricultural sector. Okay, so that will be very low in the case of developed nation. So in order to make our country into developed nation, we have to work more. Okay, next second observation, we can see that industry was an insignificant source of occupation. So it was only 10.1%. So the main reason for this low workforce in industrial sector, it was exploitative policy of British government towards our industrialists. So Britishers introduced a discriminatory trade policy. As a result of this discriminatory trade policy, they destroyed our handicraft industry. So as a result of decay of handicraft industry, so many people became unemployed, and what happened? They moved from industrial sector to agricultural sector. That is also one of the reasons for high contribution of agricultural sector. Okay, and the third one, that is unbalanced growth. So if we analyze this table, we can see unbalanced growth. Before analyzing unbalanced growth, we can explain what is balanced growth. So in balanced growth, the share of each and every sector, share of primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector to GDP or national income will be same. But here the share of employment is different. As a result, what happened? The share of income to GDP, that also will be different. Okay, so this table shows unbalanced growth because share of agricultural sector is more than share of secondary sector and tertiary sector. So India was faced an unbalanced growth during the time of independence. Still in the present scenario also India is facing unbalanced growth. So that's all about occupational structure. So in occupational structure, only one important point is that is during the time of independence, agriculture was the principal source of employment. Now we can discuss the condition of infrastructure under colonial rule. Okay, so normally the concept of infrastructure is divided into two. economic infrastructure and social infrastructure. So economic infrastructure is related with road, railway, then communication, etc. That means transport and communication. Okay, at the same time social infrastructure is related with health and education. So the infrastructure facilities during British rule were very poor. The condition was very poor. But some efforts were made to develop basic infrastructure like road, railways, port, water transport, post and telegraph. Okay, but the main aim of the motive behind this infrastructural development was to serve various colonial interests. That means they make some attempt to develop our infrastructure, but this development of the main aim of the development of infrastructure is not the development of our country. It was for their self-interest. Okay, so now we can discuss what are the infrastructural development happen in our country during colonial period. So first one, road. Okay, so the colonial administration could not accomplish much on construction of road due to scarcity of fund. So due to lack of funds, they didn't make that much effort for developing road. Actually, this roads were built primarily serve the interest of mobilizing the army from one place to another, as well as for shifting of raw material from one place to another. Okay, so for this purpose, that means for transporting army from one place to another, as well as for transporting raw material from one place to another, for this purpose only they constructed a road. Okay, next one, that is railways. Actually, the Britishers introduced railway in India in the year 1850. So in the case of railway, this railway is developed only for two purposes. One is, first one, that is to expand their market, and the second one, that is for mobilizing armies as well as raw material from one place to another. Okay, the railway affected the structure of Indian economy in two important ways. First one, that is railways enabled people to undertake long distance travel. Second one, that is it enhanced commercialization of Indian agriculture. Okay, so it affected two things. First one, that is railway enabled people to undertake long distance, and second one, that is it enhanced commercialization of Indian agriculture. So the question is, how it enhanced commercialization of Indian agriculture? We know that in rural area the condition of transportation facility it will be very poor. Okay, so as a result of the introduction of railway, so it extended to rural area, and what happened, Britishers can easily collect raw material as well as cash crops from rural area, and they can easily export or they can easily transport to the nearest port. Okay, so like this it enhanced commercialization of Indian agriculture. And the third one, that is air and water transport. Actually, British government took measures for developing the water as well as air transport, but their development was far from satisfactory. That means it is not that much developed. And the fourth one, that is communication. So during the colonial period, post as well as telegraphs were the most popular means of communication. Okay, so for maintaining law and order in colony, Britishers introduced electronic telegraph system. Actually, it was very expensive. Then also they introduced this electronic telegraph system for what purpose? For the maintaining law and order. So coming to the last topic of today's part, that is reasons for infrastructural development. Why Britishers developed our infrastructure. Okay, so the basic objective of British government to develop infrastructure was not to provide basic infrastructure to the people of India, but to serve their own colonial interest, that we already discussed. That means it was not for developing our nation, it was to serve their own colonial interest. Okay, so the first case, that is road. So the roads were built for mobilizing the army within India and for drawing out raw material from the countryside to nearest railway station or port, and to send these to England or other foreign destination. Okay, that means road built for mobilizing army people within India. At the same time, for sending raw material from village area to nearest railway station or port, to send this raw material to England or other destination. Okay, then second one, that is railway. For what purpose government introduced railway? So for mainly three reasons government introduced railway. First one, to have effective control and administration over the vast Indian territory. So you know that Indian territory or Indian geography, it is vast. So for effective coordination as well as for effective control of this vast territory, they used railway. So how they controlled India? By using armies. For transporting armies, they used this railway. Second one, to earn profit through foreign trade by linking railway with a major port. Actually, export and import were carried out through seaport. Okay, so how they sent raw material from village area to the nearest seaport? They used railways. At the same time, from port to village area or market, they need to send finished good which are imported from Britain. So for that purpose also they used railway. That means the main thing is to earn profit through international trade. Okay, next one, that is to make profitable investment of British funds in India. Then for what purpose government introduced electric telegraph? Okay, so the system of electric telegraph was introduced at a high cost to serve the purpose of maintaining law and order. So these are the main intention of or objective or reasons of developing infrastructure in India. Okay, thing is that it is not for developing our nation, it is for developing their own country. Okay, so this development of infrastructure indirectly as well as directly develop Britain. Okay, so these are the important points regarding Indian economy on the eve of independence. Okay, now we can just conclude. So by the time India won its independence in 1947, the impact of 200 years of British colonial rule was already showing on all aspects of Indian economy. So now we can discuss some points, or we can summarize some points regarding economic underdevelopment during British period. First one, that is there was a constant per capita income over a long period. That means our per capita income was not growing, it was constant. Next one, increasing dependence of population on agriculture. Majority of the people belongs to agriculture. Then third one, that is the zamindari system. That means Britishers introduced a unique way of or unique method of land revenue system, that was zamindari system. And next one, traditional method of cultivation. They didn't introduce a new method of cultivation. As a result, Indians used traditional method of cultivation. Next, high frequency of famine. That means as a result of commercialization of agriculture, what happened to the production of food grain? It declined. As a result, India faced famines in different years. Next one, destruction of Indian handicraft, that means decay of Indian handicraft industry. And last point, that is inadequate industrialization, that means there was a systematic deindustrialization under colonial period. So let us wind up this topic, and we have two more topics to discuss in this chapter. That is, first one, it is positive contribution of British rule, and the second one, that is state of Indian economy on the eve of independence. That means summarization of this chapter. Okay, so read your NCERT textbook. Once again, read your NCERT textbook thoroughly and prepare note yourself. Okay, that will be helpful for your examination. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.